Hello, welcome to Older and Loving It, a program designed to address the legal and life planning concerns of seniors and their families. My name is Philip Summers. I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney with Summers & Associates, located in Acton, Massachusetts. Seniors are routinely targeted for fraud as they often have excellent credit, accumulate a lifetime of assets, and may own their own home. These facts, combined with advancing age, make them attractive to con artists. Unfortunately, older Americans are less likely to report a fraud because they are often too ashamed at having been scammed, may not realize that they have been a victim, or don't know where to report it. Fraudsters also know the effects of aging on memory that sometimes makes it difficult for law enforcement to prosecute these matters. On today's program, we have two experts to discuss common frauds and scams targeted against the elderly. Our first guest is attorney Marian Ryan. Attorney Ryan serves as general counsel at the Middlesex District Attorney's Office in Massachusetts. She is senior counsel to the Family Protection Bureau and chief of the Elder and Disabled Unit. In addition, she prosecutes numerous felony cases at the trial and appellate level. Attorney Ryan is a frequent presenter to such organizations as the National Association of District Attorneys, the Massachusetts Bar Association, and the Massachusetts State Police. Attorney Ryan is a graduate of Emmanuel College and Boston College Law School. Our second guest is Sergeant Raymond Gray. Sergeant Gray grew up in Acton, Massachusetts, and has been with the Acton Police Department for 32 years. He supervises the department's detectives and is responsible for investigating criminal matters, including those perpetrated against seniors. He also heads up the Family Services Unit, which deals with domestic violence, elders, and the disabled. Welcome to both of you. Attorney Ryan, I'll start with you. Why are seniors targeted for fraud and scams?
I think there's probably 5 easy reasons, some of which are good things. Many senior citizens tend to be much more polite, much more receptive to the phone call, the person who appears at the door. They're also very trusting, less likely to shop around, less likely to investigate some things. They also have money. There's a good pool of assets there often. And a lot of them are very isolated.
Sure.
And then they're embarrassed to come forward and tell people about what happened.
That they've been scammed or
Right.
taken advantage of. And I know one of the issues is that certainly they're reluctant to report crime. And Sergeant Gray, I was wondering if you could, based on your experience, why are elders not willing to come forward or sometimes are hesitant to do that?
Well, for a couple primary reasons. I think the embarrassment of feeling that they've been taken advantage of. They don't necessarily understand right off that they've been a victim. It might be down the road that they find that they should have received something for the what they've been told, some kind of monetary amount that they were supposed to be receiving one type of scam, and they're just genuinely confused by what to do next when they find out that, Jesus, this isn't what I planned to happen.
Yeah. And sometimes there may be some time before they actually realize they've been a victim.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how about widows? Are widows more, targeted than couples, or it really doesn't fall along, your marriage?
I don't know
relationship?
if it falls that way. I think if there's a couple in the home and they have the time to bounce things back off each other, it might help out, and one might be a little leery, and which would prevent the other one from taking advantage of.
It always helps, I imagine, to discuss with friends and relatives, and obviously spouses would be certainly helpful.
Right. If you have family in the area still, or if you're close with anybody, it's certainly it's not going to hurt to run it by them before you make any moves.
Okay, sure. Attorney Ryan, before we talk about the various scams and different, things people do to fraud, I wonder if is there any guidelines or any rules of thumbs that the person you're dealing with is reputable, or is there anything that you can suggest to our viewers?
One thing we always talk to people about is that if you haven't initiated the purchase or the contract, that's always a reason to be concerned. You know, the contractor who comes to your door, the person who calls you on the phone to sell something, and rather than you having called a reputable store or a contractor, that kind of thing. Also, just to take a little bit of time when you feel pressured to sign something or pressured to give up some money, you can always wait 24 hours. Take, as Sergeant Gray said, time to call somebody, find out what it is that you want to do.
Don't rush into it.
Right.
Make sure you do your due diligence. Talk to friends, family, neighbors who may have used the same
Right.
person. Now, let's talk about some of the various, scam areas. And I wonder if you can, first of all, we talked previously about this, the power of attorney. Maybe you can explain a little bit of what that is, Attorney Ryan, and where, I guess, the fraud has been perpetrated.
I think in its simplest terms, the power of attorney is really when you make someone else you for all purposes with respect to your assets and your business affairs. And often it occurs when people, for instance, are going into the hospital. They want somebody to be able to take care of something. Well, they want them to be able to take care of it for 2 weeks while they're in the hospital. They sign a blanket power of attorney. That person now has the ability to do all sorts of things. We see it, for instance, when people go to Florida for the winter. They want somebody to be able to pay the utility bills that come in. They don't
Right.
want them to be able to remortgage the house.
Sure.
So that's something that people need to be very cautious that it reflects what it is that they actually set out to have it do.
Or they may be, by signing a power of attorney, they can go into actually clean out their bank accounts
Right.
if they wanted to as
Right.
well. Is there certain things you can do within the power of attorney, like, for example, limit the duration or
Yes.
limit the scope? Any
Limit the,
recommendations?
limit the duration, limit what you want them to have access to. What are they entitled to do? For instance, not to clean out the account. They're able to write checks up to $100.
Okay.
That sort of thing. And the duration is enormous. People sign them and they forget all about them.
Yeah.
They come home from the hospital and a year later that person is still using the power of attorney. And also, if you revoke that power of attorney at some point, making sure that your bank and all of those places know that that person no longer has authority.
So make sure you notify the banks,
Right.
give them a letter saying, I have revoked
Revoked it.
this authority and not to honor if it is presented
Right.
to the bank.
Right.
All right. In terms of joint accounts, I know there's
Mm-hmm.
another area that's caused tremendous problems. I wonder if you can just speak to a little bit to that.
This is one of the saddest areas. We see enormous amounts of money disappear from joint accounts because, again, what people are confused about is it does not matter the source of that money. The money, when you make a joint account, set up a joint account with someone, that person has equal access to that money legally, even if only one party contributed. So the elder has put all of the money into the account, they put a family member on that account, that person has full access to go through, spend that money, and we cannot prosecute them because legally they own that money just the same way that the elder
So as
does.
long as you're a joint owner in the account, they have full rights to the whole asset, that
Right.
whatever is there.
They are, in fact, a joint owner. That's it.
So because I know a number of elders, they set up what's called convenience accounts to
Right.
help the elders pay bills and things of that nature. I guess any guidelines in that area?
What we always say to people about that is only put in what you could afford to lose. So if somebody's going to pay you utility bills for 3 months while you're in Florida, they only need $1,000 in that account. They don't need the proceeds of all life insurance or a house sale, and that's what tends to happen. Again, because many times senior citizens don't have a lot of bank accounts. They have one bank account at their local bank, and all the money's in there. Now, when I make you a joint owner of that account, I have access to an enormous
Everything.
amount of money. And also to think about the fact that when I make you the joint owner, especially if you're a family member, I never assume that you're going to steal from me.
Yeah.
Circumstances change. There's a bad divorce, there's a substance abuse problem. Suddenly that person's accessing the money.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why I imagine you have to be very careful who you
Right.
choose. But also, I guess another lesson here is make sure you stay on top of your statement. Look at your bank account. See the activity that's going through it to ensure you're not unaware of anything.
Right.
Sergeant Gray, I know there's a number of areas, and other problems in the sort of contractor scam area where contractors come in, may knock on your door, or offer to provide services and obviously don't deliver. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what some of the issues there and maybe some of the things that seniors should look out for.
Well, it should heighten your awareness if they come to you and they're not solicited, like you said earlier. In a lot of cases, it's seasonal things, whether it's in the winter, it's snow shoveling, or in the summer months, it's paving driveways. Most legitimate places have references. They're from the area. They've been around for several years. They've got a known name, but in a lot of cases that we found, the equipment that they're using is rented or leased. There's no paperwork exchanged for the contract prices. They might set a price of $1,000 to do a driveway, but by the time they're done, it's up to $4,000, and now they're being almost intimidated into paying this.
So the contractor will come back and say, well, we agreed originally on 1,000, but
Right.
I found some problems, and now I need additional money.
Right, might mean, say it needs more site work or more materials. And with no contract, it can become very intimidating. And they know that. And they also know that there's no way of tracking them down because there's not a paper trail.
Sure.
So the biggest suggestion is to use reputable, known companies with references and get a signed contract.
So the important thing is to have a signed contract, read through the terms and conditions. I think that would be an important
Right.
lesson.
No matter what's being done, whether it's from a driveway to a roof to any kind of repairs around your house, a legitimate company will work with a contract.
Right. And I imagine reference check is so important to, if your neighbors had the same service before, find out who they use and were they happy with the service.
Absolutely. Just a matter of one or two phone calls, you're going to get some idea of how the service was, and if they're satisfied or dissatisfied, whether the price was what was quoted, and any other issues that they might have had while they were dealing with the contractor.
Sure. Now, oftentimes contractors demand a certain money up front. And Attorney Ryan, should seniors be paying for things all up front, or is there any guidelines you can give to seniors on this?
I think the guidelines that reputable contractors would give you themselves is that you should never give more than a third up front.
Okay.
So, and people frequently are pressured into paying the whole amount at the beginning. Where they've paid a third or a half, and suddenly the contractor comes back, and as Sergeant Gray says, now they're pretty intimidating. Now the house is torn apart. I'm not going to finish unless you give me the rest of the money.
Right.
At that point, you should know to be stopping. Another important factor is just making sure they're licensed. Licensed contractors have a fund available for people who do actually lose money from their contractors. You should ask to see the license, and you should call and check that the license is actually valid.
Like, for example, Massachusetts, the contractors are licensed. Is there an
Right.
agency you can call up just to ensure they are licensed?
Yes, you can call the building trade for that contractor. They will tell you whether that person actually has an active license. And then if you should sustain some loss as a result of that, you're eligible. If the contractor is not able to reimburse you or disappears, you're eligible to collect some amount of money back from that fund.
As part of doing some other due diligence
Mm-hmm.
to make sure you're getting a reputable contractor, could you call like the Better Business Bureau, or is there any other, or maybe a search on the internet? Would you
Call the
recommend?
police department. Police
Yeah,
departments
yeah,
usually
sure,
often know
absolutely.
who's been around.
Yeah, they'll know how long the company's been around, and at least that they have an established place that they work out of. But you can go online, and pretty much anything's available now through search engines, and people that are dissatisfied with contractors now to put it out over the internet.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. How about if a contractor wants you to pay in cash? Should that be an alarm that would go off if they say, "Well, I'll give you a special deal. I'll take 10%, 20% off. You just give me cash." Is there any problems with doing that, Attorney Ryan?
Well, I think, and seniors are no different than this. I mean, people like to get a bargain. They
Sure.
like to feel like they got a bargain. And if it's that great, it's probably going to backfire on you. It's going to be much harder to show what you paid when they come back and say, no, you never gave me the $3,000 if you gave it in cash. So there's always that just lack of record keeping. Or if you have to somehow later establish for some kind of litigation or whatever what you paid, you're not going to be able to do that if you handed over
Sure.
an envelope full of cash.
Now, what happens? I'm sorry, Attorney.
The paper trail is so important because things happen 6 months down the line, and trying to rebuild everything that happened that far away, if it's cash, it's very difficult. At least if you can show that he cashed a check, it's some kind of contract.
Sure. Yeah, imagine if you pay with cash, it's one person's word against another.
Right.
That's
and
right.
Unfortunately, people aren't as honest as we hope they would be. Now you're in the middle of a project, and I think you alluded to this earlier, Sergeant Gray. You have problems. The contractor's demanding more money, or who knows. What should you do when, as the project goes along, and you're having problems such as this? Do you kick the person off the property, or do you work with the person? Any guidelines we can, if you suspect they're trying to demand more money out of you during the project?
Well, it depends. It depends the circumstances. I'm sure there are legitimate overruns in any construction job, but the answer isn't by just firing more money out to the contractor. If you don't feel that it's legit, bring somebody else in that's an expert. Contact an attorney, somebody from the outside that can look at it and see whether these things are legitimate. But just by continuing to pay when you're already really not happy with the work certainly isn't the answer.
So alarms are going off. That means a real wake-up call to say, let's recalibrate here is probably the best way.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Attorney Ryan, to change the topic to a different area, I know there's been a problem when seniors have been tricked into signing their homes over to another party. I wonder if you can explain or highlight what you've seen in the district attorney's office, and if there's any, guidelines we can give to the seniors.
It's really sort of a two-part guideline. The first is to seniors themselves, which really is to be careful about what you are signing. If you don't feel able to really understand the terms of whatever you're signing, then you need to have somebody else be looking at that. Probably the most common scam, and it plays to the seniors' greatest fear, that they will not be able to stay in their home. The ploy is, if you sign the house over, I will live in the house, or I will provide care for you, and you will be able to stay here, and it won't cost you any money. That's a very complicated arrangement. You shouldn't be negotiating that on your own.
Sure.
If that's a legitimate offer, that person will be willing to sit with an attorney or sit with your family members and work that out. The second is that for family members, that at some point, many seniors suffer some cognitive deficits, that they're not really able to be making those decisions. And family members frequently are reluctant to step in and either apply for conservatorship or guardianship. So the senior is really at the mercy of everybody. And then sometime later on, the family finds out about it and they're outraged. Well, it may be much too late to reclaim that family home.
Sure.
So there is some responsibility on families to keep an eye on how people are doing and whether they're really able to be negotiating these kind of things.
Or at least to have a trusted family member
Right.
outside to look at the help
Right.
the senior read through and make sure they understand all the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, also, there's an issue in terms of as seniors age, it becomes increasingly difficulty, eyesight, be able to properly sign a check. Have you seen any issues in that area?
We have a lot of issues in that, and where it usually is the case is someone's eyesight is failing. They're not really able to fill in who the check is going to or copy the amount from the bill. So they will take a stack of blank checks, they put their own signature, and then they rely on somebody that they think they can trust to fill in that it's going to Verizon or it's going to the health insurance and for that amount. Well, there's nothing to stop anyone for asking for a couple more checks or for actually paying themselves. We frequently will see whole stacks of checks made out to the writer rather than having paid any of the bills. And the first that the elder knows of it is when those bills come due again, when they think they've paid them.
Right, and then when they realize it hasn't been
Right.
paid and it's been made out to a different person, I
Right.
guess that goes back to to be vigilant, make sure you check your statements, have a family member help you look things over. Just make sure you're on top of it. I guess that'd be the best.
And Elder Services offers a lot of programs, bonded people that will help you write those checks. People pay taxes for those services. They should avail themselves of them. And at least be familiar with what's out there. The senior centers in town can tell you what's out there. There are people, if you need help, there are reliable people that you can use rather than just someone, a neighbor or a friend who offers to start doing that for you.
Sure, absolutely. And Sergeant Gray, I wonder if you could, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but in your investigation, where people have been taken advantage of, maybe received goods, or people have been called up on the phone, maybe their grandchild or another member needs cash desperately. Have you seen any of that, or if you can provide any examples to our viewers?
Sure. We've had probably a half dozen in the past month where an elderly resident will be called and they'll either say that he was hurt in an accident out of the country or he was in some type of legal trouble, and could you send $2,800 to assist him? And with the information they're getting, there's so much on the internet now that they can get a lot of information. So They can say, you know, your grandson William, and now
Oh,
they
so
know
they can find out the actual name
Now they know
of your
the
son,
name and-
daughter, grandchild, and say,
They-
I'm calling on their behalf. Please help.
They know where they're going to. They know where they're going to college, and from some type of internet site. And they're very, very convincing. They're very patient. They'll do multiple calls if it's necessary, and they'll ask that money be Western Union to. In some cases that we've had, they ask, even though they said that he was injured in Canada, they'll ask for the money to be sent to England, which should raise a red flag.
So a
on
little
that.
common sense in that case. But imagine if you receive a call late at night, and it's always a parent's worst fear to say someone's hurt, they're in trouble. Your natural reaction is, I need to help out, and I need to help quickly. Attorney Ryan, is there anything we should seniors should do at that point when they get that horrific call, and I guess your defenses are down at that point?
Right, and also there's the physical piece. Often there's some hearing loss or something, and they haven't quite heard what the person is telling them or asking them, and they're very confused about that. You should be calling the police station. I mean, you get that kind of call, somebody's asking you for that kind of money, you know, the police station's open 24/7. You should be calling them. They will help you with that. They'll help figure out where you're supposed to be sending the money, you know, whether that's a legitimate
Right.
place. Or, for instance, as Sergeant Gray said, they can say, we've had 6 of these calls in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
There is no injury, there is no whatever. And people are frightened. I mean, it's very scary to think that a grandchild or someone is hurt or needs help. But I think if people just take that 5 minutes to make a phone call to someone, they save themselves a lot of money.
Take a deep breath, and also, if it is a grandchild, call your son or daughter,
Right.
just to confirm that. Hopefully, they find that out as well.
And often they're threatened not to do that. Part of the call is, and think that if you think that through, if the call was your grandson William is hurt, by all accounts, don't call your son or daughter to check on it. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But they frequently are frightened by that, and they will not call another family member to ask
So
for
it's
help.
pressure situations. We need the money now, or
Right.
it's going to be problems for your grandson or
Right.
granddaughter. So those are the ones you should really particularly be concerned about.
Yes.
And again, they're very convincing. They'll call, and they'll to the point where they'll say that, well, could you leave the money in an envelope outside your house? And they'll say, well, we were by there was no envelope, and they'll describe your house, your neighbor's house, and any cars that are in the yard, and they can get all that information now from internet sites that look down and assessor sites where you can see what cars are in the driveway and say that the house next door is yellow and you had the green house, but they could be in one case we tracked them down in Jamaica, and it was very convincing because the people said they must have been here.
They had
How
very
else would
specific
they-
information.
How else would they know?
Right.
Yeah.
So they're very, very good at what they do.
Very frightening, and I guess that's where you really need to have your alarms go off at that point.
Right.
And I guess the advice would be call the police at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, don't hesitate, don't delay,
Right.
and make that call. Now, there's another area is in terms of when a loved one dies, particularly elderly, their spouse may pass on, and they're at a very vulnerable point. They're looking for funeral, burial plots, and things of that nature. Is there anything we should be careful about in that area, Attorney Ryan?
Well, I think we've seen 2 sorts of things. One is where people have been ridiculously overcharged for things because they were confused. Or clearly not thinking, I'm paying $50,000 for that. And again, it's helpful to have somebody go with you. If you don't have someone, you probably have some sort of clergy or funeral, someone that you were going to use. Just kind of talk through what it is. And the other is sort of some of these prepayment plans. Your husband has passed away, it's going to cost X amount of dollars, but for triple that, you can prepay for yourself, which of course doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But people are they're distraught and they agree to those kinds of things.
So now at that time, it would be a good idea to get all the prices? I mean, I know it's a very emotional, difficult time.
Even just to take a breath maybe and think about what you're really paying, or talk to someone else. Does this seem, especially if you haven't done this before, I don't know, is $50,000 a ridiculous amount of money? Ask someone else that you trust about that.
And I also suppose as part of your estate planning, you could prepay for your funeral years, hopefully years
Right,
in advance,
right,
maybe months,
right.
but you're doing it in a thoughtful way where you can research different alternatives. So you're not forced into that,
Right.
immediate decision.
Especially with seniors too, that the death, particularly of a spouse, often comes after a long, exhausting stretch of illness. So they really are not at their best.
Yeah.
They've been caring for the person at home, they've been at the hospital, they've been wherever. Now they're suddenly at the funeral home and they're confronted with an array of things that they're not prepared to deal with.
Should we be concerned about buying things through the internet, Attorney Ryan?
I'm not a fan of
Okay.
shopping online because I think that once you put that information out there, it's everywhere. I certainly caution people if they're thinking about spending a lot of money online. I think you just compromise a lot of your private information. And also, particularly if you've been solicited to buy something online,
Right.
rather than that you went online for the site of a store that you've dealt with hundreds of times where you've had a credit card. I think that's
Right.
very different. I think a lot of Craigslist, those kinds of things, people should be very cautious.
Very good. Well, first of
Yeah.
all, you don't know if the
Right.
merchandise you're buying it has been stolen. I mean, that's
Right.
always a risk. You ever see
Yeah.
problems with Craigslist or some of those other sites, Sergeant Gray?
Yes, the jurisdiction nightmares. How am I going to, if the purchase is being made out in the Midwest, jurisdiction-wise, how am I going to investigate and successfully prosecute a case when there's always a question of jurisdiction and whether another department's going to want to get involved with it over a internet purchase. You just got to be very leery of all your purchases over the internet. Once you send your information out there, you just don't know where it's going to end up.
Sure. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Attorney
No,
Ryan.
you also sometimes end up bringing people to your own home.
Yeah.
You're putting out information. I'm selling one of my 3 very valuable whatever. The person now knows you have 2 more in the house,
Yeah.
and they came to your house to pick it up.
Or
That's
if you
information.
sell anything from your house, they come to your house,
Right.
and now they can case your house and look at
Right.
other opportunities for
Sure.
Right.
future
Yeah.
crime.
Yeah.
Anything we should know, if you are going to buy online, does it make sense to, purchase from a well-known merchant? I guess Craigslist is a bit of a worry, but how about like if you buy something at, I don't know, maybe eBay or something that's been around for a while? Should we still be cautious with that, Attorney Ryan?
I'm very cautious about that because you are sending, and just some of the things that have happened lately, people obviously can hack into some of those sites. I know they guarantee you all
Sure.
kinds of protection, but you are putting out, in many cases, a lot of personal financial information
Yeah, absolutely.
that you really don't have any control over who's going to get to that.
Right. Now, is there any resources or information out there to help seniors to learn about these various scams or various frauds? I mean, is anything produced by either the district attorney's or attorney general's office, or even your local police station? Is there information there would be helpful?
Right. We do newsletters monthly with Council on Aging in different housing complexes in Acton. We go to luncheons. We meet on a monthly basis with Council on Aging to go over the different scams and try and make them aware of what's going on out there. And we've found we've really only started that in the last 4 months, and it's been surprising how many people they call and tell me, I got one of those calls, and they didn't get the information, and so the word is out there.
Right.
And I think the more and more we do that, the more beneficial it'll be.
Well, it sounds like a great service. I mean, I think we can't over-communicate and educate in this particular area.
Right.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time right now. I'd like to first of all thank both my 2 guests, Sergeant Gray and Attorney Ryan, and also our production crew, Monique Patterson on graphics, Connor Summers on camera, Charles Bull on camera, Jordan O'Connor-Katz, who is directing this episode, and also Ron Zimmerman. My name is Philip Summers. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to contact your local police department, also Sergeant Gray at the Detectives Division, the Acton Police Department. Again, my name is Phil Summers, and thank you for tuning in to Older and Loving It.